Hi everyone, John from Office Ready here. Now in today's video we're going to be taking a look at what is, in my opinion, one of Excel's most useful features, Vlookup. I probably use this function at least once or twice a week. It's such a handy tool to use, and I'm going to pass that information on to you. Hopefully you'll find it useful. So we are actually going to start with the end result, and then we'll completely reverse engineer it and work backwards, and I'll show you how it works. So the end result, what I want to do is enter a part number, and I want it to tell me what the price is, looking at a price list, and also what the description of that product is. I also want to be able to enter an order quantity, and then based on that quantity I want it to apply a discount and tell me what the price is. So that's the end goal. So let's have a look at how that works. So on this tab here we have a price list. I've got just a list of part numbers, descriptions and prices. And what I want to do, as I said, is enter a part number and it return the price. So you can see here on row 45 we've got a part number of C004. That's a chassis and it's $1.80. So let's try it. I'm going to enter C004 and press enter, and there we go. I've got £1.80. There's my $1.80. There's my description. Now if I were to order 8, that would apply a 5% discount. But if I was to order 12, that falls into the next band of discounts. So let's try that. And you can see, there we go, I've entered 12 and it's calculated a higher discount. And if I were to order 120, I get 25% discount. And this all achieves this by using what we call a Vlookup. Now, it sounds very complicated and it's not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete out all these formulas that I've put in, and I'm going to start from scratch. I'm going to click into this cell here, and this is where I'm going to start typing my formula. So as always with Excel, to start a formula we're going to start with equals, and then we're going to use a function here called Vlookup. So as I start to type Vlookup, you'll see that Excel has this useful function called Intellisense. It kind of gives me suggestions on, based on what I've typed in, the sort of function that I might be looking to call. So it's correctly said, oh, okay, look, Vlookup's here, do you want to use that? So rather than carrying on typing it, if I just press the tab key, it will finish it off for me and start with the opening parenthesis. So the first argument, and there are 4 arguments to a Vlookup formula. The first argument is the lookup value. So what is it I'm going to look up? Well, I'm going to enter a part number into this cell here, C3. So I'm going to click into there. So look up the value in C3, and then to separate the arguments within the formula we use a comma. And as I press the comma, hopefully you'll have noticed that the Intellisense has jumped to the next part and it's put table array in bold. So that's telling me the next argument is the table array. Now the table array, all it means is, well, where are you looking this value up in? And in this example that's on a separate tab which is here at the bottom called price list. So I'm going to click on price list, and my value could exist anywhere in columns A, B and C. So I'm going to highlight those 3 columns by clicking on the column headings and dragging across. So that's my table array, that's where I'm looking the value up. So the next thing to do is put a comma in, so that's now asking for the third argument, which is the column index. And simply that just means, okay, which column of data do you want me to return when I find it? Well, we want to return the value in column C, so that's going to be 1, 2, 3. So it's the third column. And then the last argument is something called a range lookup. Now I'm going to come back later and explain what both of these do in more detail. For now we're going to choose this option called false, which means find an exact match. Now I'm going to close the formula by putting a bracket in and pressing return. Now, it's returned NA, which is an error, because it actually can't find anything, because we've not actually typed a part number in yet. So if I go back to here and let's have a look at CH005 is a chassis assembly, and it's $2. So let's enter that part number and see if it finds it. So I'm going to go back to my price check tab, click into my cell and enter CH005. And as I press enter, phew, it's returned the right value. Now it doesn't matter if I've entered it here in lowercase, but on the price list it's in uppercase. That doesn't matter. So if I click back into cell C4, I get a preview of the formula up here, and let's just recap at that. So if I click up here into the formula bar, I've got Vlookup C3, so that's this cell here, in the array of price list columns A through to C, returning the value that's in column 3 and find an exact match. And it's done that. So let's test it on a different part number. I'm going to click back into the price list. Let's scroll down a bit and I'll choose PUZ04. Press enter, and there we go, it's returned $5.10. And if I go to my price list, $5.10 is the correct value. The next thing I want to do is I want to pull in the product description here, because when I enter the part number I want to know what the product is. So again, we're going to use another VLOOKUP very similar to the one we've just done. So I'm going to click into the cell next to part number, and I'm going to start another VLOOKUP formula. So as always, equals VLOOKUP. Intellisense has given me a suggestion of what I've started to type, so I'm just going to press the tab key now, just so I don't have to type the rest of the formula. It's automatically given me an open bracket. So this time, again, I'm going to look up the same value, so cell C3, comma, to move to the next argument. The table array, well, that's in the price list sheet. And this time, I'm only going to highlight columns A and B, because all I want is actually the description. So my table array is columns A and B. And I'm going to click back into the formula bar at the top and type comma. The column index I want, it's the second column. So it's 1, 2. And again, I want to find an exact match. So we're going to use false. And then close brackets. And then as I press enter, there we go, that's pulled in the correct description for that product. So if I type in a different product code, there we go, C004 has returned a price of $1.80 and the description is a chassis. Let's go and check that against our price list. So C004 is there, it's a chassis, and it's $1.80. If you type in a part number that's incorrect, so I'm going to type in ZZ999, as I press enter, if it can't find that exact match, it will return NA, which is an error. And that's what this fourth argument of the formula does. It has to have an exact match. So I said earlier on I was going to explain the difference between that last argument of a VLOOKUP, whether it's true or false. So if you remember, if we specify false, I need an exact match. The other argument you can use is true, so find an approximate match. So in this table here I have a list of quantity price breaks. So if I was to order between 1 and 10, I would get a 5% discount. Between 11 and 54 I would get 10%, and so on. And what I want to be able to do is enter a quantity, look up this table and apply the appropriate discount for that quantity. And the quantity won't exactly match these figures because it could be between 1 and 10 or 11 and 55, etc. So this is where we would use the true argument. So let's start off in this cell here as an example. So equals VLOOKUP. I'm going to look up the value that I put in this cell here. lookup H6. In this array, so I've put a comma and the next argument is the table array, so look up H6 in this table here, comma. I want you to return the value that's in the second column, so 1, 2. And then this time, instead of choosing false, we're going to select true. So I've specified my 4 arguments, and I'm going to close that off with a closed bracket and press enter. Now it's returned NA because I actually haven't entered a value in this cell yet. So if I enter a value into H6 and let's put a quantity of 8, it's returned 5%, which is correct. So between 1 and 10 is 5%. Now if I put in a quantity of 17, hopefully that should return 10%. And if I put in 98, that should return 15%. And then if I put in a quantity of, say, I don't know, 200, hopefully that's returned 25%. So that's an example of where you would use true rather than false, where you're not returning an exact match, it's the closest match it can find. Now that we know that this formula is working correctly and it's applying the right discount percent, we can actually create a formula that uses that and applies the appropriate discount. So what I want to do is enter a quantity here, so I'm going to put 8 in there, and now I'm going to create a formula here that's going to look up that quantity in this quantity break table, calculate the appropriate discount, and then take it off of that list price. So let's start our formula with equals. So I'm going to take the value in that cell minus brackets that value times, and then I'm going to replicate my Vlookup example. Vlookup the order quantity in that array, return column 2, and find an approximate match, so use true. I'm going to close that bracket, and close the last one. So I'm using a parenthesis to close off that formula because I'm nesting a few calculations inside this one formula. So I've got to close it off with the correct amount of parenthesis. So as I press enter, there we go. It's now calculated the correct value. So if I change that and I'll put in 12, I should get a 10% discount, which I do. And if I put in quantity of 50, 60, I get an even higher discount. So that's Vlookup. There's also HLookup as well, which does exactly the same thing but looks up horizontally rather than vertically. I hope you found the video useful. If you did, have a look at some of the other videos on my channel, and if you like those, why not subscribe? I'm releasing new videos all the time, not just about Excel, it's all sorts of Office applications, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, etc. And hopefully you'll find that useful. Thank you so much for watching and hope to see you again soon.